I was alone, but music saved me. I was born in the mid-1970s in Durham, which is in the northeast of England. As a child, I often felt like there was a barrier around me. It kept me from connecting with others. We moved house a lot when I was little, and I suppose that didn't help. I found making friends to be hard, and I felt a lot of loneliness. There was music, however, and from as far back as I can remember, I had companions in the form of the musicians that I heard from my parents' stereo and record deck. My parents were real music lovers, and I can still hear my dad singing "Gimme Shelter" at the top of his voice while he was working on his car or a DIY job with a stub of pencil or a biro stuck behind his ear. I remember my mum coming in the living room and sweeping me up into her arms, crying her eyes out as news of John Lennon's death came over the radio one cold and wet morning in December 1980. My mum tells stories of the extra long speaker cable that Dad hooked up to the stereo, which allowed her to put a speaker right outside the house and under my Silver Cross pram in the sizzling heat of the 1974 heatwave. I was lulled to sleep by the heavy bass throb of Come Together or Midnight Rambler as I lay there soaking it all in. She had to stop that once I started attending the local nursery due to my habit of singing dodgy lyrics from Rolling Stones records to the whole room. The die was cast though, and I continued to play those scratched old records as we moved around and around the northeast in the mid-80s, eventually graduating to the sweet sounds of Atlantic Soul, the cream of Eric Clapton, the extremely wonderful harmonies of Crosby, Stills and Nash, and eventually AC/DC's Back in Black. It was at age 13, after months of sleeping underneath a poster of Angus Young brandishing a red Gibson SG and dreaming of owning one just like it, that my mum and I paid a visit to Durham Guitar Centre, where I picked up a left-handed Strat copy in Eric Clapton Black. It was a gift that she bought me to take my mind off a nasty bit of dental work that I'd had done earlier that day. I got some lessons from local guitar legend Billy Brennan, and that was definitely where the real work began in my life. I don't remember much of the next 2.5 years. I seemed to spend the whole time practicing chords and scales. I do remember that the lessons stopped when I was about 15 though, as my GCSE exams were coming round and the guitar tuition was a distraction. But that was when I actually quit the practicing and started learning real songs, beginning with those AC/DC and Beatles tracks that I loved so much. In the summer of 1990, after those damned exams, I finally found my first musical collaborator, a drummer who'd answered my advert in the same Durham guitar shop where I bought that first guitar. Hour after hour was spent in the shed at the bottom of his mum's garden working our way through songs by the Stones and Jimi Hendrix, amongst others. We never did find a bassist, so it was left to me to fill all the spaces under the vocals, and I see clearly how that influenced my guitar style from then on. A constantly shifting mix of chords and fills, which was full in the bass and mids and soft in the trebles. I did all the singing too. Getting to grips with melodies and choruses while covering bass, rhythm and lead on the guitar was good practice, that's for sure. After the shed came the caravan. I finally found a full 5-piece outfit featuring organ, bass, drums and a singer, seeking the new guitar player, and I slotted right into place. We named ourselves after a favourite Steve Marriott song, and the future seemed bright. Fame, renown and success. It was 1993 and we rehearsed in a stripped out old caravan while discovering the sounds of the Small Faces and the Who, writing songs together and building up a local following over the next couple of years. We won Battle of the Bands competitions and made cassette tape demos in local studios which we never did anything with other than to play to ourselves in order to prove how good we were to each other. Unfortunately, success under those conditions proved elusive, and after another couple of false starts with local bands, I loaded my guitars into the car and headed out, fetching up on the south coast of England with no idea where I was going, but trusting music to be my guide. Living in the south was different, and I really enjoyed the freedom of the creative atmosphere in Brighton. By this time I was singing in front of my own band, but there was something missing, there was some disconnect that I felt but I couldn't articulate. For a while I played guitar in a band with a great dark country rock edge and a fantastic frontwoman called Dominique Noiret, but it didn't come to much, and by the mid-2000s I really felt washed up. After numerous disappointments and letdowns, I come to distrust the music business, and I turned my back on writing and creating new material. Instead, my attentions shifted to making a so-called proper living, and then on to darker habits such as drugs and alcohol. Over the course of a few years, these two poisons slowly but surely stripped every last little bit of hope and vitality out of me. By 2013, I was at rock bottom, my relationship and my health in tatters, and it was then that I finally surrendered, once again giving over my will and my future to the greatest of guides, music. A long road of recovery followed, but thanks to chance meetings with two of my musical idols, Steve Earle and Rich Robinson, a desire to create new music was rekindled in me. Trusting the music isn't always easy. It requires hard work and dedication, but I learned an extremely long way round that for me it's not optional. Ignoring the path that music has laid out for me has taken me to the gates of insanity and death. Back in 2008, I'd recorded my first solo album, the Americana-tinged Spindrift. This finally showcased in one place the various tracks I'd written and performed while being in other bands over my whole career to that point, along with some new material. The sessions were quick and easy. I had like-minded musicians playing with me and a supportive producer in the person of Al Scott, who to this day remains a valued partner in my musical endeavours. It was a joy to make, and I was very proud of it, but after completion early the next year, I shelved it as my attention shifted to parenthood due to the arrival of my son, Thomas. Early in 2014, I took it down from that shelf, and I self-released it digitally. By 2016, I had written and released my next album, the blues rock-inspired Jenny's Place. Jenny is my wife. And I started to build up real momentum on the live scene. Again, the track listing reflected a range of pre-written material, along with several brand new tracks, including The Brooding Menace of Dark Powder, which is an autobiographical work touching on my painful experiences with addiction. This is the record that took me to the next stage of my career. Successful tracks like Dark Powder, Coffee Can Telephone and The Big Picture have racked up tens of thousands of radio and streaming plays, and I've toured it over 3 different continents. The following summer I holed up in my wife's summer house, Jenny's Place, where I compiled a bundle of around 30 new songs, the largest number of new works I'd ever had the choosing of. I'd been humming, whistling and strumming into the voice recorder app on my phone, jotting down lyrics as I rode in trains, planes and cars all over the world. It was obvious that this crop of material was the best I'd ever written, and there's no doubt that it reflects and combines my great loves of Americana, blues and rock. This productive streak has provided material for no less than 4 new albums. In April 2017, the opportunity to travel to Nashville to make a record came up. I pulled some tracks from my bundle of finished demos which fitted the style I was looking to reflect, and headed out west. The sessions went remarkably well. I was gifted to work with some of the cream of Music City session players, including Pedal Steel and Sweet Country Fiddle. Upon my return, I completed the recordings in my own Tone Can studios. This became my next solo album, The Clovis Limit Part 1, which Maverick magazine described as powerful in merging blues, country and folk. It's the first of my albums to have had a set of songs specifically written for it, which worked out really well, I think. Soon after returning from Nashville, we headed into Brighton's Electric Studio, where, along with various collaborators, I recorded an additional 22 tracks. 2 of those went towards completing the Clovis Limit 1. In addition, 12 basic tracks were laid down for my next solo album, along with most of the songs for the debut RHR record Mahogany Drift. My idea to connect with Jack Hutchinson and Troy Redfern to form a triple-fronted supergroup complete with matching beards and hats came to remarkable fruition thanks to the success of that album. Our styles contrast and complement each other in equal measure, and that is clearly displayed in the record. From the aching southern rock of Jack's solemn song to Troy's Miles Away and my intro track She Painted the Moon, where all 3 of our guitars take turns to solo expressively. The blend is seamless and it was a very fun collaboration to work on. Second RHR album, Hotel Toledo, was a concept born out of a chat with Troy sitting in an airport in Denmark before an RHR show. On a day off partway through a UK tour in May 2019, we headed back into Brighton Electric, setting up our live rigs and jamming for 5 hours. We created an immense improvised soundscape which we whittled down to just under an hour's worth of material. Soon after that, I headed out on another run of Spanish dates, with the rough mixes of the RHR session for company. As is usual for me while travelling, I'd been noting down interesting phrases and words for future use, and unwittingly I came up with the majority of the titles for the record. And the title, well, I got a message from our Spanish agent Javier on the subject of accommodations, which read something like, Day Off, Hotel, Toledo. And there it was. The Clovis Limit Part 2. Almost a year after starting the second Clovis Limit record, I finally managed to get time to complete it in the summer of 2019. I now have a good little studio set up at home, which lets me spend a lot more time working on overdubs and edits, so this next record is a lot more of a soundscape than previous works of mine. There's more of everything: guitars, vocals, percussion, synths, and there's an overarching theme which is reflected in the work that ties the songs together in what I think is a pretty unique and innovative way. The end result is a real monster, and I can't wait to share it with the world. There's going to be a couple of different versions. There'll be a streaming friendly release with short song edits, plus a deluxe edition which will have full-length versions of all of the songs, as well as additional recordings and transitions between tracks and the odd bonus number or two at the end. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to me telling my story, and that just about brings us up to date. Thanks for checking this series of videos out, and I hope to see you at a show sometime soon, either online or out in the real world once that's possible again. With all of the unexpected challenges that life can throw at us, the path will certainly remain uneven and steep sometimes, but I've got no doubt that the rewards of creating and performing music will continue to nourish and support me on this life's journey. Thanks again, everybody. I couldn't do this without you.
So take aim, all you dark-hearted bastard, sitting in your ivory tower. I hope that someday you'll be crushed and dismayed by all the beauty that this truth allows.